Catching, bonding, memories. Those are all words that may come to mind when thinking about playing Pokemon as a child, but one word that may have eluded you is obscurity, because while the base of the games may seem one-dimensional at first glance, beneath the surface layer lies some of Pokemon's most unusual and intricate little details, some being hidden for years, and some being forever lost to time. And one aspect of Pokemon that I feel doesn't get looked at enough is the assortment of lost items throughout its history, and that's what I want to focus on today. Let's take a look at Pokemon's most obscure items lost to history. Of course, if you do enjoy this type of content, make sure to subscribe. It helps out the channel and lets me know that you want to see more of these forgotten fact videos. In Generation 2, we saw one of the most important changes to Pokemon's battling dynamics in history, the introduction of held items. We got a handful of new items meant to be held to either boost a type's power or to be specifically held by a certain Pokemon. The vast majority of held items seen today were introduced in Gen 2 and live on, and in their introductory games, most of them are given to you throughout your adventure. However, there are a few more mysterious ones that never got to see the light of day outside of this single generation. You see, Generation 2 had the time capsule system, which allowed you to trade Pokemon from a Gen 1 game to a Gen 2 game, but the catch was that you couldn't trade it back. And seeing how rampant the Pokemon craze was at the time, Game Freak really wanted to encourage this behavior by rewarding players with some rare items held by certain Pokemon. These items couldn't be obtained elsewhere, and they ranged from having small, niche purposes to being outright useless. These unique items were the silver and gold leaves, the polka dot bow, and the brick piece. Actually, the leaves did make a very brief return in the Let's Go games as a singular item held by your starter, but even then, their only purpose is to be sold for a small amount of money. But you see, these two items are a lot rarer than you'd imagine. In the Gen 2 games, the only way to obtain these items is to trade in a specific few Pokemon from a Generation 1 game. But even more mysterious are the last two items, which seemingly have zero purpose at all other than to add more diversity. The polka dot bow is an item that boosts the power of normal type moves, but there's already an item in Gen 2 that does the exact same thing, the pink bow, which is far easier to obtain, as in order to obtain a polka dot bow, you would need to trade in a Clefairy from Generation 1. But lastly, we have the brick piece, the ultimate emblem of held item obscurity. Similarly to the polka dot bow, it's only held by Wild Machop in Gen 1, and if you didn't have some sort of guidebook, you wouldn't know how to get this. But if you somehow managed to get your hands on one, you'd be rewarded with what may be the most satisfying reward in any video game, 25 Pokédollars. I gotta say, that's a pretty hard deal to pass. But while we're on the topic of held items that got replaced, let's take a look at a long-gone feature that I feel like a lot of people miss: mail. It was a nifty little way to add a nice message along with a traded Pokemon, but in Generation 6, they were sadly removed. But while a new set of decorated mail was added with each generation to replace the previous one, it's always been a simple process to obtain them. Just purchase them at a Pokemart. This was the case for every generation except for one. That's right, Generation 2. Just like with certain held items, while many are regularly available in various marts, it seems like Game Freak really wanted players to go out of their way to obtain every single one of them. The Eon Mail, Music Mail, and Morph Mail are all obtainable through Gen 2's Mystery Gift feature, where you can connect with another player using the Game Boy Color's infrared port to receive rare items, a task that is already incredibly difficult to do itself today. These exclusive items included rare plushies that could only be obtainable here, as well as unique decorations, and of course, the 3 mail designs mentioned before. However, there exist 2 more pieces of mail that surpass the rarity of even these 3, and may be the rarest pieces of mail in Pokemon history, them being the Mirage Mail and Blue Sky Mail, which were only ever obtainable through the Japan-exclusive Pokemon Communication Center. But not only that, in order to obtain these pieces of mail, you would have needed to use the also Japan-exclusive mobile Game Boy adapter, which you could connect to a compatible mobile device to access special features. Unfortunately, the mobile Game Boy adapter shut down over 20 years ago, effectively leaving the Mirage and Blue Sky Mail permanently unobtainable, forever lost as a relic of a long-gone era. If you've played through Pokemon Crystal before, I'm sure you remember being able to get an egg from the daycare owner right before getting to Goldenrod City. That egg would hatch into one of several new baby Pokemon, many of which would otherwise be unobtainable. But this egg has something interesting tied to it that makes it pretty unique. I'm sure most people know that this egg has an increased chance to hatch a shiny Pokemon, more specifically, a 14% chance to be shiny. But a somewhat lesser known fact is that this shiny percentage is actually different depending on where you're located. You see, only in Japan, this egg actually has a 50% chance to hatch into a shiny Pokemon. However, it's not because of some regional bias from the developers, but rather there was a completely different way of obtaining the egg. In the Japanese versions of Crystal, once again, in Japan and Japan only, for a short period of time between early 2001 and late 2002, by using the mobile Game Boy adapter, players could receive the elusive egg ticket, an item that could be traded for the odd egg. Of course, just like the exclusive mail items in Gen 2, once the mobile system shut down in 2002, this item forever became unobtainable as the ability to use the Pokemon Communication Center was never reworked for the Virtual Console release, leaving the Japanese odd egg, along with the Pokemon inside, forever locked to the past. And seeing how limited of a time frame you had to get the egg ticket, along with needing a mobile device and a completely separate accessory, I wonder how many legitimate Japanese odd egg Pokemon still exist today. I'm sure everyone watching this knows about the X items. A lot of people probably don't use them, but if you do, they can pretty much make any battle a guaranteed win, with each use of an item boosting a stat by one stage. But did you know that for a single generation, there existed a group of X items that could increase a stat by multiple stages? Generation 5, objectively being the best generation, introduced a lot of nifty features that appeared once and never again, with some examples being seasons, fully animated sprites, and multiple new battle modes, being the triple and rotation battles. But one seriously overlooked feature that existed was the Wonder Launcher mode, which let you accumulate points throughout an online match which you could then use to purchase items to use in battle, such as potions, revives, and most interestingly, exclusive stat-boosting items that could only ever be seen in this single battle mode. And some of these were insane, being able to completely max out a stat in just one turn. There were also a couple of battle items with unique effects that couldn't be purchased anywhere, doing things such as activating your teammate's ability, removing a held item, and even an item version of the move Haze. But of course, as with all older technology, the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection servers unfortunately shut down in 2014. And even though there are third-party servers allowing a Gen 4 or 5 game to connect to Wi-Fi, given that it's been well over 10 years since the release of Black and White, I highly doubt we'll ever see these unique battle items again. And the chances of anybody playing the game now seeing them are close to zero. It's a shame, since I think the Wonder Launcher could have been carried over to newer games as a more niche way of battling online. The first Pokemon Stadium game released internationally is one of the most beloved spin-off games in the series. However, one in-game aspect that tends to get overlooked is its compatibility with the main series games, more specifically with the Gen 2 games, because Pokemon Stadium 2 contains some of the most elusive and obscure decorations in the entire series. By clearing the entire Gym Leader Castle, you'll get several special gift Pokemon, who when traded to a Generation 2 game, will be holding either a normal box or gorgeous box depending on what round they were received, and when opened, will contain a silver or gold trophy respectively, which you can use in your room as a decoration. But interestingly, there's a second way to obtain these trophies that's a lot more convoluted. If for some reason you decide to beat the Gym Leader Castle with all 151 Pokemon available in the game, you'll be rewarded with a singular Psyduck. But not just any old Psyduck. This one has the move Amnesia, which it can't normally learn. But what's more interesting about this is that depending on which version of the game you're playing, when traded to Generation 2, it'll be holding either a normal or gorgeous box. But there are 3 final items locked within Pokemon Stadium 2 that are by far the most obscure of them all. Remember the mystery gift feature I talked about? Well, there's actually a similar mystery gift feature in Stadium 2 where you can receive a gift from an NPC once a day. But unlike in Gold and Silver, here, and only here, you have the chance to receive 3 exclusive decorations, them being the Pikachu bed, Unknown Doll, and Tentacool Doll, all being included in a pool of very rare items, adding up to a total of just 0.1%, a truly gargantuan task. But wait, Have you actually ever seen these dolls in any legitimate playthrough? Or let alone even any picture of them on the internet besides Bulbapedia sprites? Well, if you haven't, it's not because they're astronomically rare, but rather it's because, strangely, they are completely unobtainable. Despite what the probability chart says, because of the way the game determines what gift you'll receive using a random number generator, without using cheats or glitches, you will never receive one of these 3 gift items. No matter how long you try, even if you were able to run a simulation of receiving a mystery gift once a day, for the entirety of the universe's hypothetical lifespan, out of all those billions of gifts you'll receive, not a single one will contain any of these specific 3 items. And that means that for eternity, they'll forever be stuck in their lonely vacuum, left as a lost remnant to be slowly lost to time as it continuously trails on.